The discovery began with nothing more than a geological survey, a routine expedition meant to map fault lines beneath a desolate plateau where wind carved the rocks like ancient bones. The region was barren, lifeless, a place where even insects struggled to survive. But beneath this emptiness lay something no one could have imagined. When a drilling probe struck an unusual hollow, its vibrations echoed in a way that stone never should. The team dismissed it as an air pocket at first, the remnant of some prehistoric cavern formed by shifting tectonic plates. But as the scanners dug deeper, as the images sharpened, the outlines of straight lines began to appear. Perfect angles. Flat surfaces. Shapes that should never form naturally. The first chamber revealed by excavations was small, no larger than a modern bedroom, but what mattered was not its size. It was the stones. Immense blocks fitted together with joints so tight that not even a medical scalpel could slide between them. Each block was carved with geometric precision so exact that even modern engineers balked. More unbelievable still was the depth at which the chamber was found, more than 2 million years worth of sediment and rock pressed atop it. The dating was verified repeatedly through multiple methods: stratigraphy, mineral growth analysis, radiometric sequencing. All agreed, the chamber was impossibly ancient. Soon, more chambers emerged from the depths. Corridors, too narrow for any natural process to explain. Staircases descending at perfect 37-degree angles. Spiral carvings etched into ceilings now crushed by time. Entire hallways lined with massive stone arcs that showed signs of deliberate architectural planning. Some chambers contained nothing but smooth floors and gently curved walls, devoid of decoration. Others displayed faint markings, symbols that resembled nothing in any known script, not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not Mayan, but something older, stranger, flowing like mathematical diagrams sketched by an alien hand. As excavations continued, the researchers found evidence that the underground city sprawled outward for kilometers in every direction. Ground-penetrating radar showed layers upon layers of structures, not a settlement, not a village, but a full metropolis buried deep beneath stone that should not exist above it. Columns rose toward ceilings now collapsed. Platforms circled central pits that might once have held water or fire. Some rooms contained what appeared to be pedestals arranged in circular formations, as though for council meetings or rituals. Others were so immense they resembled cathedrals, spaces carved with such scale and symmetry that even today's machinery would struggle to replicate them. But the most shocking discovery came in the form of a single wall panel found in one of the deeper chambers. Embedded within the rock were microscopic metallic fibers that had fused with the stone itself, fibers that behaved like the remnants of a conductive network. Their pattern resembled wiring, almost like circuitry, running in deliberate paths across the panel. When examined under electron microscopes, the fibers showed signs of machining far beyond what the Stone Age could achieve. They were made from a metal that did not match any known ancient alloy. Some researchers began whispering words they knew would spark controversy: technology. If the underground city truly predated Homo sapiens, then who built it? No known hominin species possessed the intelligence, the anatomical dexterity, or the cognitive abilities to shape stone on such a colossal scale. Yet stone does not lie. The chambers were carved. The blocks were fitted. The symbols were inscribed. Something, or someone, built this place long before humans existed as a species. Legends among indigenous people tell of the Deep Ones, beings who lived beneath the earth before the rise of the Sky Dwellers, a race that vanished when the world changed. Some described them as shapeless spirits, others as giants, others still as travelers who came from the stars before the earth hardened into its present form. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as folklore. Now, they seemed almost prophetic. The most terrifying chamber, however, was the deepest one uncovered, a vast circular room lying beneath millions of years of geological pressure. The ceiling had collapsed, crushing half the room, but the remaining half was intact. In the center stood a monolithic structure, a pillar carved with spiraling grooves that converged at the top, forming a shape eerily similar to a coil or antenna. Around the pillar were 12 stone thrones carved from a single ring of rock. Each throne faced the pillar. All were identical except one, which was shattered into fragments far older than the collapse around it. It looked like a council chamber. A place where decisions were made. A place designed for beings who sat in a circle around a central device. What kind of device? No one knew. Samples extracted from the grooves revealed traces of carbon-based residue, but not from wood, bone, or any substance known in the fossil record. It was organic, but alien to Earth. Scientists could not classify it. They could not even be sure it was life as we understand it. As excavations continued, the Earth itself seemed to resist further intrusion. The deeper they dug, the more the rock shifted unnaturally, as though the ground was trying to hide what lay beneath. Instruments malfunctioned. Lights flickered. Digging equipment seized up for no mechanical reason. Seismographs detected tiny tremors that vanished as soon as sensors were removed. It was as if the city had grown restless under the gaze of modern eyes. Some scientists suggested sealing the site, fearing a structural collapse. Others argued that they had uncovered something older than humanity, something that rewrote not just history, but the very nature of life on Earth. Was this an ancient civilization erased by time? A species older than humankind? Visitors from another world? Or remnants of a world that existed before the Earth became what it is today? Whatever the truth, the city remains mostly buried, a metropolis petrified beneath the weight of 2 million years, whispering silently through the stone. And as long as the Earth holds its secrets tight, we can only wonder who built this impossible place, and why it was buried so deep that no trace of its creators remains. High in a mountain range where winter never ends, where thunder rolls through the valleys like the growl of something ancient and unseen, lies a cave so deeply hidden within the stone that even birds avoid its entrance. Its mouth is narrow, swallowed by roots and jagged rock, and the air that drifts from within carries a faint metallic chill, as though the cave breathes memories of a world that predates our own. When a team of archaeologists first crawled inside, they expected to find simple signs of Ice Age life, fragmented bones, soot stains, primitive drawings. Instead, they stepped into a chamber that felt impossibly vast, a void of silence where time itself seemed to hesitate. The walls of the outer rooms were typical enough. Red ochre hands, silhouettes of animals, swirling marks of forgotten stories, the signatures of Paleolithic artists whose lives revolved around survival. But the farther the team explored, the stranger the silence became. The air grew denser, heavier, as though the cave resented the intrusion. Then, beyond a narrow crawlspace polished by ancient water, the explorers emerged into a cavern so immense that their headlamps barely pierced the darkness. The ceiling arched upward, invisible, and every footstep echoed with a hollow resonance that felt too deliberate, too shaped, too intentional to be natural. And there, on the far wall of this vast chamber, lay the anomaly, a mural unlike anything seen in prehistoric art. At first glance it resembled a constellation map, clusters of points connected by thin, deliberate lines forming patterns unmistakably astronomical. But the more the astronomers studied it, the more impossible it became. The constellations did not match Earth's sky as it appeared in the past. They matched the sky of the future, stars positioned in ways that would only become visible tens of thousands of years after the cave had already been sealed by mineral flow and geological pressure. The pigments had seeped into the stone over millennia, proof the artwork was genuinely ancient. There was no sign of modern contamination, no disturbance in the cave stratigraphy. Dating methods converged on the same answer: the mural was at least 40,000 years old. And yet it showed a sky humans should never have known. Then came another shock, a depiction of a long-tailed comet arcing across the heavens. Not stylized. Not symbolic. Rendered with uncanny accuracy, right down to the angle of its luminous tail. When cross-checked with astronomical records, the shape matched a comet first documented only a few centuries ago. The cave artists could not have witnessed it. And the comet would not have been visible from this region of the world at all. Still, There it was, carved into ancient stone by hands that should have known nothing of celestial mechanics. Deeper in the mural, an unsettling image came into focus. A tall, slender figure with elongated limbs and a completely smooth face stood at the edge of the star map. It lacked eyes, a nose, or a mouth. Its face was an unbroken, pale oval. Radiating lines surrounded it, drawn like ripples of energy or beams of light. The figure appeared to be pointing directly at the star cluster depicted in its future alignment. Some researchers argued that it represented a shamanic traveler or symbolic spirit. Others noted that nothing like this figure had ever appeared in known Paleolithic art. It was too precise. Too deliberate. Too unlike anything made by early humans. But the greatest mystery lay in the pigment used to create that faceless figure. Unlike the natural earth pigments used in the surrounding artwork, this one contained metallic particles impossible to source locally. The particles contained rare elements associated with meteorites, yet testing revealed the meteorite responsible had fallen thousands of years after the cave had been sealed off by natural forces. And yet, the pigment was undeniably embedded in the ancient painting. The timeline made no sense. As researchers scaled the cavern walls with ropes, they discovered thin, faintly glowing marks near the ceiling, spirals, waves, and strange geometric curves that reacted subtly to heat. When touched with warm fingertips or illuminated with infrared light, the pigments shimmered softly, as though absorbing and releasing energy. The symbols seemed arranged in a sequence, almost like instructions. Yet no known script resembled them, and no ancient culture had the knowledge to produce an energy-reactive pigment. Local legends from nearby villages, stories dismissed as superstition, spoke of a cavern where the sky turned inside out, and where the ancestors learned what had not yet happened. Elders spoke of the watchers of the returning star, beings who taught early humans secrets they were not meant to keep. These tales were always regarded as myth. Yet the cave's murals echoed them too closely to ignore. The further the study continued, the stranger the cave's behavior became. Audio recorders placed in the cavern captured faint hums, soft rhythmic pulses that rose and fell like a slow heartbeat. Seismic sensors detected microvibrations emanating from deep within the mountain, vibrations that seemed to correspond with the positions of stars overhead. During certain astronomical events, the vibrations intensified, as though the cave responded to something far beyond Earth. One night, when the constellation depicted in the mural rose above the horizon, a beam of moonlight entered through a previously unnoticed crack near the cave ceiling. The light fell directly onto the star map, illuminating the future sky with an eerie silver glow. The pigments shimmered as though awakening. For a brief moment, the entire chamber felt alive, pulsing faintly, almost breathing. Researchers watching from across the room reported dizziness, a sense of déjà vu so strong it bordered on hallucination, as if the cave itself was showing them memories, or possibilities, that did not belong to their world. The cave was sealed again afterwards, not by scientists, but by the mountain itself. A sudden collapse blocked the entrance just days after the final expedition. Some claimed it was natural erosion, but those who had been inside spoke quietly of something else, a feeling that whatever secrets the cave held were not meant to be uncovered yet, that the artwork was not a record of the past but a warning whispered from the edge of time. There is a mountain range so ancient, so deeply scarred by time, that its peaks rise like the worn teeth of some primordial creature, jagged and silent against the sky. The winds here cut like blades, and the rock is older than any ocean, any forest, any memory held in the fragile timeline of human civilization. And yet, on the highest of these peaks, nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, a team of geologists found something that shook the foundations of history itself. A shipwreck. Not driftwood. Not scattered planks. But the unmistakable, fossilized remains of a wooden vessel, a ship that should have died at sea, but instead was entombed in stone millions of years before humans ever drew their first breath. The geologists were mapping ancient faults when they noticed a strange pattern embedded in a cliff face, a series of parallel lines too evenly spaced to be natural. At first, they assumed it was the imprint of petrified roots or an ancient reed bed pressed into the sediment. But when they cleared the rock away, their hammers struck something that resonated differently from stone. The material beneath was harder, compressed, as though once organic but transformed by unimaginable pressure over an unfathomable span of time. As they chipped further, the outline emerged, the curved hull of a ship, its timbers fossilized into stone so dense it glittered with mineral veins. The shape was unmistakable. It had a keel, ribs, planks, every feature of a seaworthy vessel crafted with knowledge far beyond that of primitive humans. But the rock that held it was dated to the late Triassic period, more than 200 million years old. At that time, the mountain itself did not exist. The landmass was still forming. There was no ocean, no sea route, no sailors, no mammals, not even the faintest trace of human ancestors capable of shaping wood into anything more complex than debris. Yet the ship was real. And it had been built. When the fossils were examined more closely, the mystery only deepened. The planks had been shaped with uniform curvature, every board matching the next, as though they had been steamed or bent using techniques modern shipbuilders still rely on. The joints showed signs of a sophisticated fastening method, not rope-based, not pegged in the primitive manner of early human canoes, but a form of interlocking joinery so precise that the seams were almost invisible. Fossilization had preserved the tiniest details, grain patterns, tool marks, and, incredibly, remnants of some kind of sealant applied between the planks. Analysis of the sealant revealed compounds that did not match any natural resin or tree sap known on Earth. The chemical composition suggested a refined process, a mixture of organic and mineral elements blended at high temperatures. No creature of that era possessed the intelligence, let alone the technology, to manufacture such a substance. Then came the metal. Along the inner hull, they found fragments of what appeared to be fittings, nails, brackets, or reinforcements, but fossilized in such a way that only their shape remained. When samples were taken from the surrounding rock, tiny metallic traces were discovered. The alloy, though transformed by time, contained ratios of tin, copper, and a third unidentified element not found in natural deposits of that period. It was a manufactured metal, engineered by intelligence that should not have existed when reptiles ruled the earth. Paleontologists, historians, and physicists all descended upon the site, arguing over how a ship could have found its way to the top of a mountain older than the seas themselves. Some proposed the ship had been carried upward by geological uplift, but the mountain was formed millions of years before any plausible shipbuilding species evolved. Others suggested catastrophic floods, but nothing in the fossil record pointed to such an event during the mountain's formation. The timeline simply did not fit. The strangest feature, however, lay in the ship's design. Its hull shape did not match any known ancient vessel. It was too sleek, too aerodynamic, too deliberately engineered. The bow tapered to a razor-like point. The stern curved upward with a mathematical elegance unseen in any early human craft. One engineer noted, almost in disbelief, that the ship's design resembled modern concepts for vessels meant to travel not only through water, but through denser or more turbulent mediums, as though the ship had been built to withstand forces far greater than ocean waves. Could it have been an atmospheric craft? A vehicle meant to traverse storms, currents, or even something beyond water entirely? Buried just beneath the hull, researchers found something even more troubling, a black layer of fused mineral, as though the vessel had burned or passed through intense heat before fossilization. The rock bore signatures of thermal exposure far beyond volcanic temperatures. Some suggested a lightning strike. Others whispered of something stranger, re-entry heat. But such ideas were quickly dismissed, at least publicly. What remained undeniable was this. The ship was older than humanity, older than the oceans that could have carried it, older than the continents themselves in their modern shape. And yet, it was built with intelligence. With purpose. With design. Local legends, surprisingly, offered eerie insight. Indigenous groups spoke of the sky travelers, beings who rode canoes of thunder long before the mountains rose. They said the mountains trapped one of these sky ships, burying it when the world was soft and the air was young. For generations, stories were passed down about a great craft swallowed by the earth before humans were even formed from clay. Science scoffed at these tales. But now, faced with evidence embedded in stone, the line between myth and memory had blurred beyond recognition. Was the ship a relic of a forgotten Earth species whose civilization rose and fell long before ours? A craft built by travelers from elsewhere, caught in the chaos of Earth's formation? A vessel from a previous epoch, erased by time and catastrophe? Or a message in stone, hinting that history is not linear but cyclical, that worlds are built, destroyed, and rebuilt again? Whatever the truth, the ship remains locked in rock older than the oceans it should have sailed, its story trapped in the fossilized silence of a world that refuses to reveal its earliest secrets. Beneath one of the quietest regions of Anatolia, under rolling plains where nothing seems to move except the slow drift of clouds, lies a darkness so vast that even modern explorers have not mapped its full extent. Local shepherds once spoke of a hollow earth below their feet, a world of chambers and tunnels that breathe in the night. For centuries no one believed them, until a villager renovating his home smashed through a wall and found a staircase descending into an abyss. What he found was not a basement, not a cellar, but the entrance to Derinkuyu, the largest underground city ever discovered. Yet what makes it a true mystery is not its size, but its behavior. This city is alive. When archaeologists descended into the first chambers, they expected a crude network of caves. Instead, they found an entire civilization folded beneath the earth, a vertical metropolis plunging more than 18 stories deep, with ventilation shafts, wine cellars, stables, living quarters, schools, and massive stone air locks that could seal off passages like the bulkheads of a submarine. The city could house more than 20,000 people, and early estimates suggest it could have held even more if fully occupied. But what stunned researchers most was how the city breathes. Derinkuyu's ventilation system is unlike any in ancient architecture. A single central shaft, wide enough to drop a stone into darkness without hearing it hit bottom, feeds air through hundreds of side tunnels. Even 60 meters below the surface, the air remains fresh, cool, dry, perfectly drinkable to the lungs. When outside winds shift, the city seems to inhale and exhale subtly, as if responding to pressure changes above. No smoke collects, no stale air lingers. How could ancient builders design an HVAC system rivaling modern engineering, without machines, without electricity, without even written plans? The mystery deepens when you consider its scale. Every passage is precisely angled so that air circulates naturally. Every room connects to pressure channels that equalize climate. Even the kitchens, buried deep in darkness, were built so smoke would vanish upward through unseen vents, disappearing into the earth as if consumed by stone. Some archaeologists propose that the city was built during the Byzantine era as a refuge. But that theory collapses under scrutiny. There are no Byzantine tool marks. The deeper levels are carved with a precision that suggests far older techniques. The tunnels widen and narrow in ways that mimic natural lung bronchi, optimizing airflow exactly as the human respiratory system does. Such biomimicry appears in design only millennia later, with modern architecture drawing inspiration from organic structures. Then comes the most puzzling feature of all. The rolling stone doors. Massive circular blocks, some weighing half a ton, guard certain passages. They fit into carved recesses with such perfection that a single individual could roll them into place with minimal effort, yet once closed, entire armies could not force them open. The stones have no handles, no hinges, no levers. They lock the city from inside like the iris of an eye sealing shut. But who were they locking out? Who threatened a population so large it could vanish underground for months at a time? Digging deeper into Derinkuyu's origins, archaeologists uncovered something unsettling. Lower chambers showed signs of extreme age, erosion patterns inconsistent with typical hand tools. One corridor appeared melted, as though the rock had been softened or carved with heat. Some researchers compared the smoothed surfaces to laser-cut stone or high-temperature shaping techniques far beyond ancient capability. And unlike typical cave living, these stone walls contain traces of minerals consistent with intense but localized thermal exposure. Even more peculiar were the acoustics. In specific chambers, a whisper can be heard perfectly from clear across the room, while shouting goes nowhere. These resonance chambers amplify certain frequencies and cancel others, a feature found in sophisticated modern acoustic architecture, but impossible to achieve by accident. Priests or leaders in these rooms could speak softly and be heard by hundreds. Was this deliberate? A ritual space? A command center? No one knows. The mystery widened when researchers realized Derinkuyu is just one node in a vast subterranean network. Beneath the Cappadocian rock lie hundreds of underground cities, many connected by tunnels stretching kilometers across the landscape. Some lie so deep that ground-penetrating radar fails to determine their true boundaries. Even when sealed thousands of years ago, the tunnels remain structurally sound, as if their makers understood rock density, stress paths, and collapse risk with scientific precision. Who could have constructed such a system? The mainstream explanation credits early Christians hiding from Roman persecution. But the deepest layers predate Christian presence by thousands of years. Others point to the Hittites, but no Hittite tools or relics have been found. With each descending meter, the complexity increases rather than decreases, the exact opposite of historical development. Then there are the myths. Ancient Anatolian legends speak of a race that lived beneath the earth, emerging only when the world cooled. Others tell of a great firestorm or sky war that drove people underground. Some stories even describe metal birds raining destruction from above, forcing survivors into subterranean sanctuaries. While dismissed as folklore, these tales eerily resemble memories of cataclysmic events, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, or something more enigmatic. Even today, Derinkuyu presents phenomena that defy explanation. Tourists claim to hear rhythmic pulses in the lower levels, like distant machinery or a heartbeat in stone. Scientists attribute this to wind pressure, but the timing is irregular, and no airflow source has been identified. Some chambers fluctuate in temperature for no known reason, warming or cooling without any connection to the surface climate. Motion sensors placed in sealed tunnels have detected vibrations, soft, periodic, like footsteps in places no human has walked for thousands of years. What was Derinkuyu truly built for? A refuge? A fortress? A research center? Or something older, something built by hands that understood the earth's breath better than we ever will? Today, only a fraction of the underground kingdom is open to the public. The rest remains sealed, unexplored, and eerily silent. Authorities claim deeper tunnels are unsafe. But researchers whisper about chambers too perfect to be accidental, shafts dropping into darkness, and echoes that sound like movement far below. Whatever lies beneath Derinkuyu, it suggests one chilling truth. Someone, long before recorded history, built a city that could withstand the end of the world. Far across the vast blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where clouds drift like wandering spirits over endless water, lies a place so impossible that even today's engineers shake their heads in disbelief. Off the eastern shore of Micronesia's Pohnpei Island rises Nan Madol, a sprawling city built on coral reefs using stones so massive they rival the blocks of the Egyptian pyramids. Columns of basalt tower over the water, forming canals, dwellings, temples, and tombs, an entire metropolis floating upon the waves. And yet the true mystery of Nan Madol is not just its construction, but the haunting question that no one has been able to answer. Who built this impossible city, and how did they move the unmovable? Nan Madol consists of nearly 100 artificial islets, each formed by stacking giant basalt logs, some reaching 25 feet in length and weighing several tons apiece. These columnar stones resemble enormous stone beams, naturally occurring octagonal prisms that fracture cleanly, but none exist on Pohnpei's coastline. The nearest source lies miles inland, across dense jungles, steep cliffs, and swampy valleys. To reach the ocean, the stones would have had to be transported through terrain so treacherous that even modern machinery would struggle. Yet centuries ago, someone transported hundreds of thousands of these basalt giants and stacked them with such precision that the city still stands today, defying storms, waves, and time itself. The local legends are even more astonishing. According to ancient Pohnpeian oral histories, Nan Madol was built by two brothers, Olasopa and Olasopa, who arrived from the sky. Some stories say they were human sorcerers with powers that allowed them to command stones through chance. Others claim they rode upon a flying dragon, guiding the blocks through the air like feathers. When foreign explorers heard these tales, they dismissed them as fantasy. But to the islanders, these stories are not metaphors, they are memories passed down through generations, encoded into the very identity of the land. Even without the legends, the questions multiply. How could a society without metal tools, wheels, or beasts of burden have quarried, moved, lifted, and fitted together such enormous stones? A single Nan Madol block weighs as much as a fully grown whale. Experiments attempting to replicate the process on a smaller scale have failed. The coral foundation is fragile. The tidal waters fluctuate. The basalt logs must be set carefully, like massive interlocking bones, or the entire structure collapses. Yet the builders accomplished all this using techniques that leave no trace, no ramps, no carved paths, no abandoned quarries showing systematic extraction. It is as if the stones transported themselves, silently crossing land and sea to assemble a city no one should have been able to build. Nan Madol's layout is even more perplexing. Its canals, crisscrossing like the veins of a living organism, separate districts for priests, nobles, and rituals. The central temples rise upon platforms of enormous basalt beams stacked in natural patterns that seem both architectural and symbolic. Some structures, like Nandawa's, the royal mortuary, contain walls towering 25 feet high. Inside lie the remains of rulers from a powerful dynasty, the Sodalur, whose reign became increasingly tyrannical before collapsing into myth. Archaeologists studying the site noticed that the entire city appears aligned with astronomical markers, lunar cycles, and tidal flows. Certain chambers amplify sound, while others dampen it completely, acoustic behavior too complex to be accidental. The basalt columns resonate when struck, producing deep tones like the beating of drums. Some researchers believe the builders may have used sound as a tool, perhaps to communicate, perhaps for ritual, or perhaps even to manipulate the stones themselves. Legends claim that Nan Madol was once illuminated at night, not by torches, but by an otherworldly glow. Priest-kings, according to myth, possessed stones that shone like stars. Whether symbolic or literal, such stories hint at technologies or phenomena now lost to time. But beyond folklore, a scientific problem remains. Nan Madol is sinking. The city's massive weight rests on coral reef foundations that should have crumbled thousands of years ago. Yet they still endure, as though reinforced by some unknown stabilizing method. Engineers studying the site note that the basalt pillars distribute weight evenly, mimicking principles used in modern earthquake-resistant design. Could the builders have understood these principles intuitively, or did they inherit knowledge from an even earlier, forgotten culture? Every attempt to date Nan Madol yields contradictions. Some carbon samples suggest the city is 900 years old. Other data hints at far greater antiquity. Certain drowned structures indicate sea levels were once much lower, placing parts of Nan Madol's foundation in an era thousands of years before the rise of the Sodalur dynasty. If true, that means the dynasty inherited, not built, the city. Many now wonder if Nan Madol is the Pacific's version of Atlantis. A remnant of a pre-flood civilization swallowed by rising seas. Local stories whisper that an entire kingdom once existed around the ruins, with palaces, gardens, and towers now lost beneath the waves. Divers exploring nearby depths report stone walls, causeways, and foundation blocks extending into the dark, as though Nan Madol is only the visible peak of a far larger submerged world. To this day, the site remains eerily quiet. No birds nest there. No villagers live there. Islanders speak of a curse, those who disturb Nan Madol suffer misfortune. Whether coincidence or fear, the city maintains an aura of isolation, as if still guarding the secrets of its builders. When archaeologists leave at dusk, the water around the ruins reflects burning sunset light, turning the basalt towers into shimmering silhouettes. The wind hums through the stone pillars like a voice chanting from forgotten ages. And in that moment, it becomes clear why Nan Madol is one of the world's greatest mysteries. It is a city too advanced for its time. Too heavy for its foundation. Too precise for the tools available. Too massive for the society that supposedly built it. Its stones stand silent, but they tell a story of something humanity has forgotten. In one of the most barren deserts on Earth, far beyond the reach of roads or villages, there is a vast stretch of land where the horizon seems to shimmer with mirages even on cool days. The dunes roll like waves frozen mid-motion, and the silence is so complete that the beating of your own heart sounds out of place. This is a region explorers avoid, not because of danger, but because of the overwhelming impression that the land itself is watching. And at the center of this isolation lies an object so incomprehensible that scientists still refuse to agree on what it is. Half buried in golden sand, exposed only after a rare windstorm stripped away years of layered dunes, stood a massive circular structure, smooth, perfectly round, and clearly artificial. It was not stone, not metal, not any known composite. The surface felt warm even at night, and faint pulses of light shimmered beneath it, like embers trapped under glass. Standing nearly 4 meters tall and stretching 8 meters across, the object appeared to be a gigantic wheel or clock, an enormous ring carved with symbols so precise they seemed machine-etched. But the most unsettling discovery came when researchers realized that the symbols moved. At first, they believed the shifting patterns were caused by sunlight, shadows, or optical illusions created by the shimmering desert air. But when lasers were trained on the symbols, the light reflected back in patterns that changed incrementally over time. The markings rotated, not continuously, but in small, rhythmic shifts, like ticks on a clock counting seconds. Only one problem. The symbols were moving backwards. Every 21 minutes, the outer ring shifted 1 notch counterclockwise. Every 6 hours, the inner ring rotated slightly faster. Within days of observation, a pattern emerged. The entire structure was measuring time, but not in any human unit. Some scientists proposed that each ring corresponded to astronomical cycles older than human civilization. Others believed the object was tracking something not of Earth at all, perhaps movement on a galactic scale. Even stranger were the environmental effects. Within a 50-meter radius of the object, time behaved differently. Shadows near the ring were elongated at dawn but unnaturally short at sunset. Mechanical clocks slowed by seconds each hour, while digital clocks malfunctioned entirely, displaying random timestamps or reverting to factory reset. Plants placed near the structure wilted unnaturally fast, while insects inside the area behaved in chaotic patterns, flying in spirals or becoming completely still for long periods. A researcher accidentally left a cup of water near the ring overnight. By morning, it had partially frozen, despite temperatures never dropping low enough for ice. In contrast, a metal tool placed beside the cup grew so hot it burned through the sand. This paradox made no sense. Temperature fluctuations like these violate the laws of physics, yet the object continued its slow, deliberate ticking, ignoring every attempt to analyze it. When ground-penetrating radar was used to scan beneath the sand, the results became even more baffling. The ring was only the visible part of an enormous buried structure. Below the surface lay a network of interlocking disks, layers upon layers arranged like the components of a machine. Some disks were aligned vertically, others horizontally. Several formed spirals that plunged deeper than the scanners could penetrate. The underground structure extended at least 80 meters below the desert floor, and likely farther. It was not a monument. Not a sculpture. Not a ruin. It was a device. But a device built by whom, and for what purpose? Archaeological records show no civilization ever lived in this region. There are no ruins, no artifacts, no signs of habitation within hundreds of miles. Even nomadic tribes avoided the area entirely, claiming the land was wrong, a place where the sky forgets its direction. Their stories describe mirages that show future events, echoes that whisper before the wind blows, and footprints appearing in sand hours before the walker arrives. Some dismiss these tales as folklore, until they encounter the mysterious footprints themselves. Researchers documented one such event. Early one morning, fresh tracks appeared circling the ring, bare footprints, large, evenly spaced, walking in deliberate patterns. But there were no other tracks leading to or away from the area. Whoever, or whatever, made them had appeared out of nowhere. Attempts to follow them led nowhere, the prints stopped abruptly in open sand, as if the walker had simply vanished into thin air. As the team studied the ring longer, it began reacting to their presence. When someone approached within 3 meters, the ticking accelerated slightly, and faint vibrations traveled through the ground. Some described feeling a deep pressure in their chest, as though their heartbeat was sinking with the object. Others felt sudden nausea, dizziness, or a distorted perception of time. One researcher reported seeing the sky dim momentarily, as if clouds had passed overhead, but there were no clouds for miles. The most frightening event occurred on the 19th night of the expedition. Near midnight, the symbols on the ring lit up faintly, first blue, then white, then a pulsing red that throbbed like a giant heartbeat. The sand around the structure began to shift, moving in waves as though stirred by invisible currents. A faint hum filled the air, vibrating through the bones of anyone nearby. Then, for exactly 7 minutes, every clock, analog or digital, within a 10-kilometer radius stopped. Time didn't slow. It didn't glitch. It stopped. And then, as though nothing had happened, the ticking resumed, and all clocks jumped forward exactly 91 seconds, a discrepancy no one could explain. Researchers fled after that. The desert was quiet again by dawn, but the ring continued its slow rotation, counting backwards towards something no one understood. Some believe it is a celestial instrument marking the end of a cosmic cycle. Others think it is a leftover device from a civilization wiped from Earth's memory. A few whisper that the ring did not come from Earth at all, that it fell long before the desert existed, when oceans covered the land and the sky was strange. Still it waits, half buried in sand, slowly ticking backward, as if counting down to an event humanity is not prepared to witness. High in the Arctic Circle, where the sun disappears for months and the cold presses against the skin like a living force, there lies a glacier so remote that only satellites have mapped its full outline. It stretches across a barren, frozen plain, an endless sheet of ancient ice, untouched by footprints, machines, or even animal tracks. The silence is absolute. The air hangs thick and unmoving. And in the midst of this frozen eternity stands a wall of ice unlike anything seen on Earth. Locals call it the Mirror Glacier, a name that at first seems poetic, until you stand before it. The glacier's face is unnaturally smooth, polished like crystal glass. Unlike normal ice, which forms ridges, cracks, and jagged edges, this surface is perfectly uniform, reflecting the world with eerie precision. But the reflection is wrong. Not distorted. Not delayed. Just different. When researchers first approached the glacier, they noticed that their reflections didn't match their movements in real time. A scientist would raise his arm, and the reflection would hesitate before following, just a fraction of a second too slow. At first, they blamed the Arctic air, the dense cold, the angle of the sun. But the closer they got, the more the reflection acted independently. A man standing still would see his mirrored self tilt its head, turn its shoulders, or shift its stance, actions the real man had not made. Then came the moment that changed the mission entirely. One researcher approached with a thermal camera to map temperature differences. As soon as the camera focused, her reflection smiled at her. She did not smile. No one did. The reflection's smile was slow, deliberate, almost knowing. The scientist dropped the camera, stumbling backward on the ice. Her colleagues rushed toward her, only to see their reflections lag behind, trapped in a world with different timing, different logic, different rules. The glacier became a phenomenon. Not natural. Not geological. Something else. Research teams built a temporary camp a safe distance away and began studying the ice. When samples were drilled, they discovered the glacier's interior was not layered like normal ice. Instead, it contained massive vertical sheets, like frozen glass panes, stretching deep into the earth. Each sheet reflected differently, showing scenes that were sometimes accurate, sometimes subtly altered, and sometimes entirely foreign. In one reflection, the sky was green where the real sky was blue. In another, mountains appeared where there were none. In others, there were figures, shadowy silhouettes that moved behind the reflections like people trapped in a world just beyond the ice. These figures grew bolder with each passing day. Some researchers saw reflections of themselves walking deeper into the glacier, disappearing into its depths. Others reported seeing large structures, towering obelisks, arches, or entire cities made of glowing ice, none of which existed in the real Arctic. When approached, the reflections changed, hiding the structures behind smooth glass-like surfaces as if the glacier were guarding something. The greatest shock came during an incident known now as the divergence event. One morning, while recording the glacier's activity, a scientist noticed something unusual. The sun in the reflection was rising in the west, not the east. Thinking it was a trick of angle, he adjusted his position, yet the reflected sun continued moving opposite the real world. Hours later, reflections began behaving as though time were running backwards. Waves of aurora borealis flowed in reverse. Reflected snowflakes rose from the ground and drifted upward, disappearing into the mirrored sky. Then, at exactly 14:07 local time, the entire surface of the glacier rippled, like a curtain of liquid glass, and for a brief 5 seconds, researchers saw a world completely different from their own. A skyline of crystal towers. A vast icy plain with geometric structures. Figures tall and thin, moving gracefully in the distance. Above them, a glowing spiral hung in the sky like a frozen galaxy suspended in place. And then, just as suddenly, the reflection snapped back to normal, showing only the empty Arctic wilderness. After the event, seismic sensors detected low-frequency vibrations pulsing from deep beneath the glacier, patterns too rhythmic to be natural. They resembled communication signals, or the heartbeat of some colossal machine buried below the ice. Magnetic compasses spun uncontrollably. Radio equipment malfunctioned. Even GPS signals warped, showing researchers miles from their actual coordinates. The deeper they drilled, the stranger things became. At 90 meters below the surface, drill bits began striking a substance harder than diamond, something that looked like ice but sounded like metal. A ringing hum traveled up through the equipment, vibrating through the bodies of the researchers. They stopped immediately. The hum continued for several seconds after the drill was shut off, reverberating through the glacier like the echo of a giant bell. Local Inuit elders told a warning when they heard of the mission. They said the glacier was a window to another Earth. A world beside ours but not ours. A place where the cold remembers differently. They spoke of ancient beings who walked between these mirrored worlds, leaving behind scars in the ice that reflect realities we cannot see. The elders warned that when the glacier's reflection diverges, it means the barrier between worlds is thinning, that something on the other side is watching back. Their warnings were dismissed. Until the night a researcher vanished. Security cameras showed him leaving his tent and walking toward the glacier. He stopped in front of the reflective surface, staring at his mirrored self. But the reflection did not stop. It stepped forward. Moved differently. Tilted its head with a strange, almost curious motion. And then, just as the man leaned slightly closer, his reflection reached toward the ice. The camera glitched. Just 2 seconds of static. When the feed returned, the man was gone. And his reflection, now alone on the ice, turned and walked away into the mirrored world. He was never found. The glacier remains sealed off by governments, fenced miles in every direction, inaccessible to researchers or the public. But satellites still occasionally pick up brief flashes, ripples along its surface, shapes moving behind the ice, and reflections that do not match the world above. Some believe the glacier is a dimensional membrane. Others believe it is a machine built by an ancient civilization to observe alternate timelines. A few whisper that the reflections are not reflections at all, but watchers waiting for the barrier to weaken. Deep in the heart of the Sahara, far beyond any marked path, where dunes rise and fall like golden mountains and the wind carries whispers older than civilization itself, explorers discovered an anomaly buried beneath the sands, a structure so delicate yet so vast that it could only be described as a library. But not a library of stone or wood. Not a library of scrolls, clay tablets, or carved inscriptions. This library is made entirely of sand. And it is alive. It began with a satellite anomaly, an area where dunes moved in unnatural spirals, defying known wind patterns. From above, the sand seemed to shift as if guided by invisible hands, forming geometric shapes that dissolved and reformed in perfect symmetry. When researchers arrived on site, they found the dunes surrounding the region had compressed into something harder than sandstone, almost like molded silica, smooth, glass-like, and ringing softly when struck. But at the center, beneath a thin layer of loose sand, lay the entrance, a perfectly circular shaft descending straight into the earth. The walls of the shaft were lined with fused sand, as if exposed to extreme heat, but the edges were too precise, too clean. The descent led into a massive chamber illuminated not by torches or artificial lights, but by the sand itself. The floors, walls, and ceilings all glowed faintly, as though millions of microscopic crystals captured sunlight and radiated it back in a soft golden aura. And there, arranged in concentric circles around the chamber, were books. Not books as humans know them, but rectangular blocks made purely of compressed, glass-like sand. Their surfaces shimmered with intricate patterns, lines, grooves, and symbols that shifted when touched. When a researcher brushed their fingertip across one of the patterns, the grooves rearranged themselves, like grains of sand flowing into new shapes, forming words, images, and diagrams. The book was rewriting itself. Every block reacted differently to each person who touched it. A historian saw ancient battle scenes. A biologist saw diagrams of extinct plants. A linguist saw unfamiliar alphabets that rearranged into translations of themselves. It was as if the blocks read the reader, adapting their content to match the seeker's mind. Some blocks didn't show images at all. Instead, they produced sounds, soft whispers, layered voices speaking in languages no one recognized. Others vibrated faintly, resonating with the rhythm of a heartbeat or the hum of distant machinery. The deeper the team ventured into the library, the more complex the books became. Some contained entire landscapes frozen in shimmering light, moving panoramas of worlds that may have never existed on Earth. In the deepest chamber stood the largest block of all, a towering monolith of translucent sand rising nearly 3 meters high. Its surface swirled continuously, never settling into a fixed pattern. When approached, it projected faint shapes into the air, shadowy outlines of colossal cities, swirling galaxies, and beings of light moving through structures that resembled both architecture and machinery. One researcher described it as a history of everything that was, is, or could be. Another called it a chronicle of alternate Earths. A third walked out of the chamber in silent horror, refusing to speak again. But the library did not want to remain silent. During the second week of exploration, the sand began to shift on its own. Entire shelves rearranged, blocks rotated in unison, and symbols spiraled across walls. The team realized the library was reorganizing itself, responding to their presence, cataloging new information, and possibly even recording them. Then one night, the impossible happened. A researcher brushing away loose sand uncovered a block that looked identical to the others, except it already had a handprint embedded in its surface. Not impressed onto it, not carved, but woven into the sand itself, like a memory frozen in glass. The print matched the researcher exactly, every ridge, every detail, yet it was fossilized in a layer of sand dated tens of thousands of years old. This discovery led to a terrifying hypothesis. The library does not store ancient knowledge. It stores all knowledge. Past, present, and future. Days later, while scanning deeper layers, sensors detected an enormous void beneath the lowest chamber. The floor was hollow. Something lay beneath. But before they could drill, a tremor shook the entire library. Sand cascaded from invisible seams. The blocks vibrated so violently they became almost liquid, and the glowing patterns dissolved into chaos. As the team fled the chambers, the walls began sealing themselves with thick curtains of sliding sand, doors closing, tunnels collapsing, floors shifting to erase every trace of human intrusion. The library was protecting something. Or hiding. Within minutes, the entire structure sank into the desert, swallowed by soft dunes that swept across everything like a living tide. By sunrise, the entrance was gone. The dunes stretched smooth and unbroken, as if nothing had ever existed there. Yet explorers claim that sometimes, during sandstorms or under the light of a full moon, the dunes shimmer with faint geometric shapes. As if the library is still there, just beneath the surface, waiting for the next mind curious enough, or foolish enough, to awaken it again. Some believe it is a repository left by an ancient, forgotten civilization. Others think it is a machine designed to record reality itself. A few whisper that it is conscious. A living archive of timelines, possibilities, and futures the world is not ready to know.